With 3 games left for Michigan State football, point blank, we need to see these 3 things, not just to make a bowl game, but also feel optimistic about 2025. Let's go.
You are Locked On Spartans, your daily podcast on the Michigan State Spartans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. Spartan friends, Spartan family, Locked On Spartans listeners, thank you all so much for tuning in to Locked On Spartans. It's your team in green and white 5 days a week. Please rate, review, subscribe, and hey, happy Veterans Day to all those that have served out there. Of course, those that are still currently serving. A simple thank you does not cover it. We're obviously all indebted to what you have done. So thank you all very much to all the veterans. And of course, the people still currently serving as well. Would be remiss if we started the show with anything different. Now, hope everyone enjoyed that second bye week of the season. I know that, mentally ill people like myself that are way too involved in their college sports fandom probably could have used a second bye week. Those were 2 tough losses that we just saw, right? After Michigan State plays the best that we've seen them play in the last 3 years against Iowa, well, you lose to the worst Michigan team in a generation, and then you get curb stomped, lighting up 47 unanswered to another first-year head coach. But hey, thank God for the bye week. We get to recoup, re-energize, and let's go in these last 3 games, eyes wide open. Let's all hold hands and go into this fire together. Now, look, I got 3 things that we need to see from this Michigan State football team the last 3 games of the season. And it's not just to get to 6 wins, perhaps 7 wins if you're feeling spicy. But yeah, I'm sorry to do this, but let's already start looking ahead to 2025, because first things first, let's start off with, where we ended last week. All right, this was Friday's episode. Didn't start on the happiest note because, we talked about the pass rush or lack thereof. Guys, we need to see some semblance of life out of a pass rush that is, pretty much on life support right now, because as we talked about with Jace Clarizio, if you missed the episode or have, just forgotten all the numbers, which I would want to as well, let's rehash some of those. Right now, okay, according to Pro Football Focus, if you want to take their word for it, you have the 5th worst pass rush amongst Power 4 football teams, right? We all know the stat by now. You have 0 sacks since the 3rd quarter of the Boston College game. It gets even worse. They only have 12 pressures on the quarterback since Boston College. And guys, in just the last 3 games, just 6 pressures overall. There's no way to put lipstick on this pig. It is horrendous. All right, now, why do we need to see this the last 3 games? Of course, it helps when you pressure the quarterback. You get his feet moving a little bit. Look, okay, fine. I guess we will reach for a little bit of lipstick if you're that optimistic of a fan. I mean, Michigan State has faced some pretty good pass protection teams in their last 2 or 3 games, right? Like Indiana, very good offensive line. Michigan, not the Michigan team from last year, but still above average. And then, Iowa, decent as well. All right, but hey, here you are. You have Illinois, Purdue, and Rutgers coming down the pike, okay? Both Illinois and Purdue's quarterbacks are top 20 in the nation at most pressured quarterbacks. Okay, so you're getting some gettable opponents right here as far as pass rush goes. Rutgers, not too far behind. They're 33rd in the country at most pressured quarterback, all right, on their offense. Now, with most quarterbacks, if not all quarterbacks, these guys' completion percentage goes down when they're under pressure, right? Like Luke Altmaier, okay? That's the guy that we're going to see this Saturday, Illinois' quarterback. He throws it at 47.1% completion. That is 36th in the country when under pressure, that is. That's pretty good, okay? Not elite, 36, but still on the better side of things. Now, after that, like Hudson Card, the Purdue quarterback, all right? He throws at 38.8%. That's 86th in the country. And then Athan Kaliakmanis, the Rutgers quarterback, when he's under pressure, 39% completion. That is 80th in the country. You need pass rush, of course, because it's nice to pressure the quarterback, but those are the numbers behind it. If you want to get to 6 wins and get to a bowl game, these quarterbacks just struggle. Like, these aren't great all Big Ten quarterbacks, especially the last 2 you play. When you get anywhere close to their face, those lights get a little too bright for them and they start getting wonky with the ball. But also, guys, when it comes to next season, or even this upcoming offseason. Like, if you can't do it against these guys coming up, these three teams, what does that even say about this offseason or next year? And we're not talking about guys like Quindarius Dunnigan or Chris Bogle, guys that are going to no longer have eligibility after this year. We're talking guys like, well, Anthony Jones. And not to call people out, not to, ruffle some feathers, but in the last 5 games, in 126 snaps, going to need to see more than just 2 pressures from the young man, right? Or Jalen Thompson, guy that we were very high on coming into this year. He had a great true freshman season, especially in that final month. Just 2 pressures in 149 snaps in the last 5 games. We need to see a little bit because, well, as we go to the offseason, look, sure, you can go to the transfer portal. You could pick out an edge rusher. That is a lot easier said than done, especially if you're a program like Michigan State where, let's be honest with ourselves, you're not going to have your pick of the litter. There are going to be other teams, other programs more established than you that might be more appealing to top edge rushers. So your in-house guys, the guys you're trying to develop, well, I want to see some optimism there. I don't think that's out of line. So, yes, of course, we want to see wins. The pass rush will help get those wins this year, but got his little cherry on top. We just want to go into the offseason with some optimism. Thing number 2 we got to see here these last 3 games, guys. Well, let's talk about pass rush. But from the other side of things, let's talk about pass protection. All right, Aidan Chiles has now been pressured on 37.9% of his dropbacks. That is 15th highest in college. All right, now his completion percentage is fine. It's kind of like Luke Altmaier. It's nothing world, shattering, but it's fine. It's 45.7%. That's in the 40s nationally, okay? Now, when he's not pressured, well, that's a 22% uptick in completions when he is kept clean. All right, now, why do you need to see it? Similar to what we just talked about with the pass rush against other offensive lines, well, it's gettable. Like Illinois' pass rush, it's middle of the road, okay? It's nothing to write home about. It's not catastrophic, but you can succeed against these guys. Purdue, all right, they are graded 114th in pass rush according to Pro Football Focus. So they are bad. Not Michigan State bad, unfortunately, but that's a really gettable matchup that you can have. And Rutgers, they're decent. Again, not world-beating, but you got to see it. Not just to win these games, not just to keep Aidan Chiles on his feet, but the offseason too, right? Now, we've talked about it here and there, even going back to last offseason, of my goodness gracious, offensive line depth was an issue. Why didn't they get more in the transfer portal? It's just because offensive linemen are hard to come by in the portal. Not saying it's impossible. Of course, we are enjoying Tanner Miller. We got Luke Newman both on the offensive line, but it's slim pickings overall when you try to get transfer offensive linemen. Not impossible, but man, with your 2 tackles, Ashton Lepo, Stanton Ramel, want to see a little bit more of those because, well, they're coming back next year. Now, of course, it's been a tough season for Stanton Ramel, right? Redshirt freshman, not just that, but coming off of an ACL injury last year. This former 4-star has had a lot of learning to do against some pretty good pass rushes as well, right? Like Indiana, one of the best, if not the best in the conference with pass rush, right? Michigan, well, that's no picnic. I know by and large the Wolverines are a terrible team, and I still cannot believe he lost to them. The pass rush is still pretty elite over there, okay? So it's been tough competition. You can see why. And, of course, it doesn't help that you've had a lot of other injuries. Brandon Baldwin has had to play inside now, but you get the point. Need to see a little more for Michigan State to get to 6 wins, but also just to feel optimistic about next season, even before this one is over. And number 3, let's not oversimplify this. Aidan Chiles. Got to see more out of him. Right now, we've seen progress. I'm not going to backtrack and take back anything we've said about, hey, seen progress from week 1 to where we were before the Indiana game. The Indiana game was a little step back, and didn't help, too, that Indiana was in his grill for most of the game, of course. Not excusing those 2 interceptions. Those are still terrible. Those seemed like those interceptions and decision-making that he had against FAU and Boston College, but can you get the middle of the season, the Iowa game, for example, where you're making good, sound decisions with the ball? Can you make some hay with your legs? We'll see how much his injury that he sustained against Indiana hampers him, but point blank, he's got to be the man, right? The defense, I think, can hold their own the next 3 games. Okay, none of these offenses necessarily scare me, even with Michigan State having a outright terrible pass rush. Let's call it what it is, guys. The defense, I think, can hold their own. Can Michigan State's offense, of course, piloted by Aidan Chiles, get it done here? Similar to what we just talked about, with, hey, I want to feel optimistic about pass rush and pass protection. Well, I also want to feel optimistic about the quarterback going into this season and not having the conversations of, oh my God, do they need to bring in a big transfer to push this kid? I don't want to do the drama. You don't want to do the drama. No one wants to do that. So those are the three things here. Let's keep it rosy. Let's talk about football recruiting on the other side of this break. But first, you need to talk your ears off about 5 Hour Energy. Folks, our friends at 5 Hour Energy know that being a passionate football fan isn't just a hobby. It is a way of life. It takes a lot of energy to power through the all-day tailgates, touchdown celebrations, or even, well, an agonizing second overtime, which is why they've created the Stan the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot with a special flavor called Fan Fuel. The energy shot made just for super fans like us, the fans who are first in the parking lot and who are last to leave. We see you. Now, what gives me a little bit of energy about Michigan State? What gives me that fan fuel this upcoming week? Well, it's a gettable game, guys. On the road, Michigan State, 3-point underdogs. I'm feeling spicy about this one. 5 Hour Energy knows that no matter what team you root for, being a fan requires heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy. Whether you're prepping for the big tailgate or ironing your jersey, your game day to-do list is always a mile long. That's why the limited edition Stan the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot is here to help keep you fueled throughout the season. What's your fan fuel this week? Whatever it is, do it with a 5 Hour Energy. Available on 5hourenergy.com, shipped nationwide. Also, guys, right behind me, that's right, back in the home studio, the team ticker sign is lit up like a Christmas tree. And speaking of Christmas, with the holidays rolling around, get the Spartan fan in your life one of these team ticker signs. Have them throw it in their kitchen, their man cave, their garage, their bar, their bathroom, wherever it is. Team ticker sign is going to look great. Now, Michigan State fans, we're lucky. All right, because we get 2 selections. You get the Sparty, like this one, or, the old Spartan logo that you see on the helmets. 2 to choose from. Now, let's say you're listening to the podcast. You're not watching on YouTube. You're asking yourself, what on earth is a team ticker sign? It's like a countdown clock to kickoff, except juiced with so many steroids. We're talking stats, which are playing behind me right now, schedules, weather reports for upcoming kickoffs, live scores of other games Michigan State athletics are competing in. It's the best. And it's also hard to find something better than this, guys. Use promo code LOCKEDON, all one word, LOCKEDON at teamticker.com for $50 off your purchase. Again, guys, go to teamticker.com, use code LOCKEDON for $50 your purchase at teamticker.com. All right, so this piece of news that we're going to start off this recruiting chat with, a few days old. Apologies for this. A little busy with football and basketball both going on, but let's talk about the great world of MSU football recruiting. Jesus. Jace Clarizio. That's right. Highly ranked 3-star. Ron 3 has him rated as a 4-star. He's the running back out of East Lansing. Committed to the Spartans, of course. Well, he got an offer last week from a school. I don't know if you've heard this one. Alabama. Got an offer from Alabama. And, per Adam Gorney of Rivals, he's going to be officially visiting the Crimson Tide coming up middle of this month in the Alabama versus Mercer game. Whatever. He told Jason Kiloff of On3. Now, Jason Kiloff tweeted this out. Quote, I am still committed. It's still go green. An opportunity came across, so I just want to go check it out. I don't want to leave any boxes unchecked, which is mature. God, if I had a kid that was, that talented, I would say go visit every place you possibly can before you make this career-defining decision before college. But I would also be lying to you if I said this wasn't a concern. Well, certainly if the guy is going out on a date with Alabama, yeah, that's something to be worried about. Now, I will say this, as Alabama sits with the #1 recruiting class in the country as things stand, they do have 2 running backs committed right now to their 2025 class. Both kids ranked inside the top 250. One of them's a top 100 kid. They have running backs already. If Jace committed there, sure, I can see why. The pageantry of the Crimson Tide playing SEC football, all the bells and whistles that come with that. Still be a little confused, I suppose, being the 3rd running back in that class. But whatever. Hey, maybe he doesn't want to run away from the grind. It is what it is. All right, because right now, Michigan State's class, which sits at a smooth 58th nationally and 16th in the Big Ten, Jace is the only running back in this class. I guess. Bryson Williams, he's that all-purpose guy from Orchard Lake St. Mary. So if you want to count him as a running back, nevertheless, he's one of the few running backs, maybe the only one in this class. Now, where Michigan State has the advantage, it's what you already know. It's the hometown team. Just a trip down Abbott Road gets you right to campus. The lone running back in this class, of course, but we'll see where it stands. There's some whispers that Alabama will have the stronger NIL package for him, as if there's ever a shortage of money in Tuscaloosa. So we'll see how much. We'll see if MSU can match. We're going to learn a lot about MSU's NIL this offseason, not just as it pertains to recruiting, but also keeping some of the players here. You guys already know who I'm talking about. One, Nick Marsh, who he's not currently playing here for free right now. It's a pretty competitive package to get him here in the first place. I'm not sounding the alarms for Nick Marsh, but between stuff like Clarizio, guys already on the team, we're going to learn a lot about where Michigan State stands in the NIL game in these next few months. But regardless, that's the update with Jace Clarizio. Yeah, hey, still go green. I'm going to go down to Alabama anyway. We'll see what happens after that. No ideas there. And, Aidan West, 3-star corner. He officially visited somewhere else this week to Virginia Tech. Now, there was a story out there on Spartans Illustrated that, he's got a lot of friends that played for Virginia Tech, and they had a big game against Clemson. He just wanted to go to Virginia Tech and just catch his friends play on the school's dime. Fine, whatever. If you want to buy that story, go for it. I just, when something like that happens, I don't think it's not nothing necessarily. So keep an eye out on Aidan West. And then, there's Emmett Bork. This happened a while ago, so apologies for not getting to this one. 3-star tight end from Wisconsin, committed to the class no longer. He's now with his hometown school. Wisconsin committed there, I think right after the Michigan game, I want to say, or maybe the Iowa game, whatever it is. Great things going on in the world of Michigan State recruiting. And I got to say, I feel like I'm starting to miss the mark here a little bit, because we talked this offseason about, hey, small visitors list, Jonathan Smith and company only go after kids they know they can get. And we fact-checked that with what they did at Oregon State too. All that is still correct. Now, what was incorrect is that, all right, Will, you get to use some of your official visits left over for this upcoming season to try to flip some guys. Let's get in there, Jonathan Smith. Let's play that grimy college recruiting game, right? Except one problem. He really hasn't had anyone notable on campus. Elijah Dodson, the 4-star out of Belleville, committed to Pitt. Had him in for the Iowa game after he left, saying, you know what, I'm going to come back and officially visit one day. And all he's done since is officially visit Michigan. And now all the smoke is blowing to their end right there. So that's going great as he sit with the 58th class in the nation. Now, we did say this, and I don't take back anything we said in the offseason about why it is the way it is. They saved face last offseason with a class, I think it was 32 or 33 ranked in the nation. That was pretty good at the end of that cycle, all right? Especially with all the speedy reform happening from going to Columbus to East Lansing. You know the story by then. Took a lot of kids that were committed to Oregon State over here. Now it's a staff, mostly from the West Coast, still have to make inroads, and we talk about this ad nauseum, so I'm sorry if you're already bashing your head on your keyboard listening to this. Recruiting is a 2-year game. All right, you want to make inroads, start having kids on campus as juniors, sophomores, early as freshmen, and then, by your second year here, ideally, if you're as fresh as Smith and company is, that's when you start making, good inroads with some pretty solid recruits. Still, I'm not going to say you should be happy or content with this. 58th in the country. Any way you slice it, that is alarming. That's not to say we don't like a few kids in this class. I'm very high on Braylon Collier, the 3-star out of Sandusky. Of course, Derek Simmons out of Frankenmuth. He's following that Derek Harmon path of being a 3-star, kind of, at a smaller school in Michigan, not really heard of, and then we'll just blowing up late in his senior season, I should say. There are still some solid kids in this class, but look, I know we could trust development. I know we can go back to the old Dantonio days of getting 3-stars and building them into NFL players. That's just not sustainable. It's not. So it has to get better. So how about that for a rosy Michigan State football recruiting update? We will be back if there's any good news here. But yeah, with a few weeks until signing day, see some guys take official visits elsewhere, and you're still sitting at 58th in the country with no other kids visiting you that are really worth writing home about. With all due respect, I know it's a very mean way to talk about some 16, 17-year-old kids, but it is what it is. It's not good. It's not good. Do you know what is good, though? It's all the good things happening over at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. I swear this show's going to get a little happier, guys. Maybe. Who's to say? Anyway, hey, NFL season, college football season, NBA season, whatever season it is, FanDuel has got it hooked up. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get the hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's over at FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Again, guys, FanDuel.com. Early last week, we opened up the mailbag, so apologies to Spartan Dog for taking this long to get to the question. Again, a lot going on in East Lansing, so thank you for being patient on this one. But this was a good point here. After watching that dismantling against Indiana, how are we always so far away? It feels like we have a decent number of 3- and 4-star kids starting, yet we never seem to improve as a program over the past few years. Are they the wrong 3- and 4-stars? Well, here's what's going on, and I get... If you're tired of me talking about Aidan Chiles, how young he is, sit down for this one, because here's why it looks the way it is right now. On offense, your quarterback is a sophomore, all right? Your top receiver is a true freshman. Your left tackle, like we talked about earlier, is a redshirt freshman coming off a knee injury. He's done a lot of learning against some really good pass rushes, right, guys? At one point, you started Rakeem Johnson, a true freshman interior lineman, playing left tackle against Ohio State. It's been a patchwork season for the offensive line, needless to say. On defense, you got guys like Justin Denson playing 20 snaps last game, right? Derek Carmen, Simeon Barrow leaving did not help. The pass rush is horrible. And here's where we're going to bring it back to recruiting. I'm not saying this is the only reason Michigan State is at where they're at right now, but it wasn't nothing that in 2021, only 18 kids were brought in that recruiting class, right? Or in 2023, for example, 16 kids in that recruiting class. There's a lot of criticisms to be made about Mel Tucker. We've done, pretty much all the criticisms on this show over the past, 14 months, I would say. One thing that you can't 100% hammer him for is recruiting, because he did bring in some really solid kids. The rub, though, oh God, no pun intended, Jesus, I might have to edit that part out. The catch-all here, I guess, oh boy, we're doing damage control right now, is the lack of depth that he brought in with those. It was, yes, you got some good 4-stars, you got some good Plan A kids. It's just not enough of your Plan A kids from those June visits ever came here. And it never seemed like you had a Plan B. So that's why you ended classes with, 18 kids, 16 kids. I know it doesn't seem like a lot, maybe just 6, 7, 8 more kids in a class. But tell me what another interior defensive lineman could have done here. What another linebacker in the 2021 class would have meant for this team, right? Another speedy slot receiver, right? You could pick and choose your position. To come up that short, numbers-wise, in those classes, it's a reason. Again, not the only reason, but no favors were done there. So it's a good question. We can make excuses all day. I don't even know if they're excuses as far as just fact in the matter. There are a lot of young kids playing important positions that we just rattled off right there. So it's a little bit of this. It's lack of talent, lack of depth, good amount of injuries. It's all the fun you get in year one of a rebuild, right, guys? Crunchy's Gourmet tweets at Sheehan_sports. Love your show. Well, thank you very much, Crunchies. I love you too. Looked at Dantonio's first year results, 2007. The largest loss he had was by 7 and finished the Big Ten schedule with a win against top 25 Penn State. Why should we be optimistic about Smith going forward after the 3 huge blowout losses and recruiting in the toilet? Well, we covered the recruiting in the toilet. The hope there, because, even as Oregon State classes were not anywhere near, top 25, of course, but they were, in the 50s and 60s by and large. The hope there that MSU has more resources, obviously, a better location. They got more of a namesake nationally in college football, all the good stuff there. And of what we talk about with, being patient, waiting for the 2-year inroads to be made, to be determined if they are and to what effect. But yeah, recruiting, all we have is hope right now for that. Now, I will say this, just to make comparisons with Dantonio's first year in 2007, which gave me an existential crisis earlier today. That was 17 years ago. High school kids visiting campus to decide what college they're going to were born that year. Oh my God, that's crazy. Anyway, let's not spiral too hard, Matt. Yeah, like just like you said, Dantonio really had a strong first year, right? Like that biggest loss by 7 was to Ohio State. All right, they played in the national championship game that year. A 4-point loss to Michigan, a ranked Michigan team too, and also, you know what? Similar to this year, they lost to Boston College. Of course, that was at the end of the year, the Matt Ryan Bowl. They also had a second-year sophomore quarterback, Brian Hoyer. All right, like there's a lot of similarities you can make. They also grinded out a week 1 win against a group of 5 teams, just like Michigan State had to this year. So there are some similarities, some differences. The biggest difference that I want to just say, though, is I think teams these days, like the top-end teams, like your Ohio States, your Oregons, the Michigans, or God, in this case, Indiana's this year, I think those are just better teams, right? And just focusing on like the Ohio States and the Oregons, right? Like powerhouse teams with big NILs, like even, in 2007, Ohio State, clearly a really good team. Even they had holes. Whereas now in the transfer portal day and age, the NIL day and age, if a team goes into the spring window and knows they have a hole, well, they patch it up with money, right? Just like how Oregon did with Derek Harmon. They realized that, okay, we're a really good team. Where are we lacking? Interior defensive lineman. They went out and got one, just like that. Whereas, back then, I think the top end of college football wasn't really like minor league NFL. I think it was just a step below that, whereas that's why maybe the blowouts seem a little harsher this year under Jonathan Smith, is that like these are some incredible teams as compared to what you got like 17 years ago, just thanks to transfer portal and NIL. Now, should Michigan State be taking advantage of that too? Yeah, of course. We'll see how it goes here in the next few years. But yeah, I do want to caution this though. Mark Dantonio in year 3 also lost to Central Michigan. So I hope that, in 2026 when Eastern Michigan comes to town, be careful what we wish for in, emulating what Dantonio did. I don't want to do that show. But yeah, look, Dantonio, no question about it. Even if Michigan State wins their next 3 games this year, Dantonio had the way better first year. I think he had a little more going for him. I think the roster was a little better made from what he inherited from John L. Smith. I think a lot of that was just Looney Tunes coaching in the John L. Smith era, which forged the anxiety-ridden body that I have right now. But yeah, that's where it's at right now. Mark Dantonio, best first year when it comes to him versus Jonathan Smith. Now we're gonna end this show here with Andrew wrote in late Saturday. Are we starting to get concerned that we may have let a gem get away in Sam Leavitt? Every time I see him, he looks tough and is a playmaker. Sam Leavitt, fantastic season for Arizona State. Right now, he has played quarterback in 8 games, just lost 1. They had a great comeback win against UCF last night. Kid slinging the rock. 14 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 61 completion percentage, also doing work with his legs a little bit, 4 rushing touchdowns, but yeah, we got this question time and time again in the offseason of like, how do we know that Aidan Chiles is better than Sam Leavitt? So I don't necessarily know if we do. Like, there is a realistic world where Sam Leavitt is better. We are seeing it right now. I'm calling it. Unless Chiles throws for 7 touchdowns, 0 interceptions the last 3 games, Sam Leavitt, by and large, had the better season right now. Right now, as things stand, the better quarterback. Okay, now I'm not calling it over because I still think that Chiles has the higher ceiling. I know we're all sick of hearing that, but, their careers aren't over just yet. But yeah, Sam Leavitt having an incredible season. Now, I don't lose a lot of sleep with it, though, because there are some other people that responded to this tweet, like KJC. He says, if I remember correctly, Leavitt got the shaft a bit from Smith at Oregon State, so he had an axe to grind. MSU was unlikely to be able to keep him. Which is like, yes, it did happen. Sam Leavitt famously or infamously said that, you know what? Hey, Smith didn't recruit me when I was in high school. I'm out the door. I think that was more of a, you can't fire me because I quit, or oh, you can't break up with me first because I actually dump you sort of line. Like when Smith was hired here, the writing was on the wall, whether it was told directly to Sam Leavitt or he just knew that Chiles was coming over here. I don't think Smith got here, sat in his office and looked at a picture of Sam Leavitt and a picture of Aidan Chiles and said, who's it going to be? It was a foregone conclusion when you hired Smith, right? And why do I know that? Why am I not just blowing you-know-what out of my you-know-what? It's because Well, Sam Levitt had an axe to grind that. Well, Smith didn't recruit me in my own backyard at Oregon State. All right, well, neither did Arizona State, who you eventually, committed to out of the transfer portal. But more importantly, Kenny Dillingham, the coach at Arizona State. Well, he was the offensive coordinator at Oregon when Sam Levitt was in high school. So obviously, Dillingham and Oregon gave Levitt an offer, right? Or maybe the offensive coordinator too at Arizona State right now, who was also a former quarterback coach of Justin Herbert back at Oregon. Surely they were on the radar, right? No. Dillingham never gave an offer to Levitt out of high school too. Like, if we're going to be Mr. Oh, well, I'm only going to go to people that believed in me out of high school. Well, that didn't happen. Again, I think it was, well, you can't fire me because I quit. I'm going to be the stronger one here. I'm the reason that I'm leaving, not you. And so that's where I'm at. Again, good for Sam Levitt. A fantastic season over at Arizona State. What else can you say? Like, yes, he is the better quarterback right now. I just can't put myself in a world of like, oh man, like Jonathan Smith really made a huge mistake not keeping him. I just don't think it was ever going to happen. So that's where I'm right there. There we go, guys. Well, that's the end of the show. My goodness gracious. I just looked at how much time. We're going to get to a few more questions, but sorry about that. All right, guys. We're going to be back. Oh, my God. This is going to be an insanely busy week. We're going to try to get with Locked On Jayhawks. Both our schedules are a little testy with each other right now. But even if we don't, we're going to get into this Champions Classic preview tomorrow. And, well, of course, football season is back after the bye week. Locked On Illini will be joining the show at some point this week. Other good guests. Hey, guys, take care of yourselves. Enjoy the upcoming week. Love you all. Go Green.